spoiler onslaught going forward. Abandon all pretenses, ye who enter here.
Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas.
Welcome, everyone, to A Very Tomodachi Christmas special.
Starring Hipster Snek as Hipster Snek, Clockwork as that creepy uncle you sometimes bring over, and Dietaku as that lovable guy who lives next door, and Chloe as herself.
Much like our Halloween episode, we each selected 4 movies. This time they were Christmas movies. We each put forward one that we wanted to watch, and we went through all of them. So our list today, we have A Christmas Story, which was Dietaku's choice, Scrooged, which was my choice, Muppet Christmas Carol, which was the Hipster Snek's choice, and Die Hard, which was Clockwork's choice.
Which is arguably the best Christmas movie.
Some would debate if it's a Christmas movie. I think it's a Christmas movie.
I'll say this. You know how there's that battle between Snek and myself over whether or not, pineapple on pizza is a good thing? I've discovered whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie is just as divisive. I'm personally fine with it, but man, there are some people who get mad. Really
I have a friend
mad.
of mine who literally, he didn't get mad about it. He was like, I would argue yes, it happens at Christmas, but is it about Christmas? It's not.
Does that differentiation even matter?
That's a good question too, though.
The entire reason why John McClane is there is because of a Christmas party. I'd say yes.
And to go see his family for Christmas. I mean, of course, everything happens in the movie, which we'll get to here in a minute, but it all has to do around the theme of a Christmas, of the Christmas theme. The ending song is a Christmas song.
Yeah, and dare we say it, John McClane wins because of a Christmas miracle, because of the gift he gave to his wife got from her boss, that ultimately she has to give up in order to save him and herself, and also their kids. But, I mean, Alan Rickman gets the gift of a long drop and a short stop. It's all about giving.
I mean, I don't think she had much choice in giving it up. I think she was like, "Oh God, what's happening?" And
no, she kind of drops. She drops Hans Gruber like a bad habit. So I'm just saying.
So.
Yeah, it starts because of Christmas. It proceeds because of Christmas, and now he has a machine gun.
Yeah, I know. For those who
ho.
haven't seen Die Hard, you should. Where you been? First off.
Law of averages dictates there's someone out there watching right now that has never seen Die Hard.
Also, I mean, there's a lot of younger folks who probably have never heard of it because, it's a rated R action movie, and that's verboten now. That's verboten. It's everything's PG-13. Everything's PG-13. And it's like you couldn't do a PG-13 Die Hard.
Yeah, this
and
is
do it
still
justice.
very much an R movie. Because I noticed, I went back and was looking at some. If you could look back at some R movies of this sort of era, it kind of begs the question of whether the R rating would still stand in modern today. But this one's still definitely an R.
The toplessness in the very beginning, just the fact that they show Hiroshi, Holly's boss, get his brain blown out all over the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, in that scene, he literally said the worst thing that would do him the least amount of good in that setting.
Well,
he
I mean,
kind of should have predicted that was not going to pan out in his favor.
Although to be perfectly honest, going back to what you were saying, Cog, at least in that instance, if we're going by the Homestar rules, that would be a double R-rated film because the bullet passes through his head and then on the other side, and you actually see it. So that's what I'm thinking. But I guess we're doing Die Hard first. So
I guess we're doing Die Hard first. That seems like where we're going.
We are, yes.
Okay. So can I just say though, first off, that I think it's funny that even though John McClane gets the first kill, he gets the first kill via OSHA compliance stairwell.
He does.
He does.
True.
He does.
That's true.
It's like, and actually, it's funny because Snek and I were like looking at the film. I'm like, man, Hans Gruber's group would be up like perfect for a bunch of Shadowrunners. And then it's like, and then the first guy gets killed with the stairs. I'm like, ooh, no, you're right. This is perfect.
Man, never ever trust yourself in OSHA compliant stairwells. You just cannot trust them.
So this was my movie of choice, was Die Hard. I mainly chose it because of the meme. Is it a Christmas movie? Is it not a Christmas movie? It is still a hot debate in the trenches of warfare of Christmas movies for some reason. I chose it mainly because out of all the movies, this is the most actiony, and you can always do a little bit of action during Christmas time. Because who wouldn't want a little bit of action during Christmas time? I did not know, as we were pointing out even before recording, is that this was Alan Rickman's first film, if I remember correctly. And I was actually taken as a surprise that it was.
It is.
As I was like, oh wait, like who is? I had to actually stop the movie, look it up, because I'm like, I know who this is, and I saw it. It's Alan Rickman. Was it 19? When was this? When was this done? 1988, and it was his first cat. Like, oh wow, that is insane. I don't know why I never put two and two together until we started actually doing this.
Yeah, this is the film that made him. Although a lot of the ladies and gentlemen that are listening to this probably would know him more as the role he would take on later as Professor Severus Snape. Because Harry Potter is a juggernaut.
That always kills me is seeing him in Die Hard, and then I remember him from the Tim Allen movie Galaxy Quest too, where he's like, damn it, I used to be an actor once.
Oh yeah, he was in that too.
My grandpa's hammer, you shall be avenged.
I completely forgot that.
Yeah, he was the not Leonard Nimoy in that one. Yeah, that's another good one. We should watch that one later. Snek and I actually had a bunch of other movies that were like, man, we need to watch this, like RoboCop and like, what was it, like Dirty Harry and stuff like that. I'm like, man, there's too many of them. But yeah, no. So we can get the TLDW, Too Long Didn't Watch, out of the way. This all starts with a NYPD detective, Mr. John McClane, going over from New York to LA in California in order to visit with his wife because she invited him to a Christmas party. She is now part of the Nakatomi Corporation, and she's doing quite well for herself. It's also important to note that, yes, this is in 1988 because John McClane is flying around on an airplane, commercial airlines, absolutely strapped. And that's not something you can do now, by the way. Don't do that. You'll get arrested. It's not like big things, but it's really little things that's just like, man, this movie could not be made today. Like the fact that they have the one bit where the her and her pregnant friend, Holly and her pregnant friend, are like, drinking with their boss, and they're like, oh, do you think that you could have a little drink? And she's like, oh, baby's ready to tend bar. I'm like, whoo, you couldn't do that now. But it's a lot of little things like that, like the fact that the limo, the limo driver boasts that their limo has a car phone. It's like, okay, I mean, I have a phone right here, but right, cell phones aren't in vogue yet. And while they're in the Christmas party in the Nakatomi building, the Nakatomi building gets attacked by a bunch of European terrorists / cum thieves who are trying to steal things from the Nakatomi vault, basically to rob it blind. And Hans Gruber and his European terrorists cum thieves proceed to take everyone hostage and are trying to rob the place blind. However, they did not realize that while in the building, there's also another person in the building, Mr. McClane. And Mr. McClane is resourceful. He has a gun, and later on, he has a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho. And that's pretty much the plot. It's a cat and mouse game between Hans Gruber and his goons and Mr. McClane. Is that fair to say, gentlemen?
That sounds right. Yeah, about 12 of them and one main character and never enough shoes.
I think he says the first pair of shoes he tries to grab, he says he finds the one guy that has feet smaller than his wife. Which I found out hilarious.
Well, at least they don't have all of the quotable lines on the thing, so you get to see those. And man, is this film quotable. I mean, yippee-ki-yay, mother... I mean, come on. And that doesn't count because that was a quote. All right. I don't go to bad word jail because of that. I just want to point that out.
Especially since both Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman both say it.
It's important to notice too. Because this film also kind of made Bruce Willis. Before this, he was in Moonlighting, and he was.
Oh, there's 3 sequels after this.
Yeah, so he was a cop in Moonlighting, and he was doing like beer commercials, I want to say. So, it's kind of this weird thing where it's like this guy who's mostly a TV actor then becomes the main lead for a big budget action movie like this. And I mean, he kind of blows it out of the park.
The other big ones didn't start showing up until later. Because Die Hard definitely was one of the big elements that launched his career.
Yeah, he came off the set of Moonlighting.
It's also important to notice that Moonlighting is where we get the "Excuse me, princess" line from. So all you babies who still think that's funny, yeah, you can thank Bruce Willis for that.
He comes up with a couple different ways of figuring stuff out. Like his first thing was like, oh crap. I don't want to do, how do I do this? Oh, I'll pull a fire alarm. That'll, most places have fire alarms that automatically call emergency and stuff like that nowadays. So he does that. But of course the terrorists have a out for that. All they do is make a quick phone call, and everything, and then that gets shut down. The only time they actually start getting people down in the movie, or the cops actually come to the movie, is when Bruce Willis throws the dude off the tower onto the guy's car, going, "Hey, there's terrorists here! Send help!"
And then, Officer McClane decides that, having been put in this position, the only answer is to deal with the problem yourself. And he does.
Well, he gets help.
Yeah, he throws the dead body down, and then they open fire on the cop, and he's just like, okay, it's not a prank. This is actually happening.
I'm sorry if I don't understand physics or anything that much, but I mean, the cop saw the flashing light on top of the roof. Would the sound of gunfire not resonate from that high up? Or maybe because he was that far away?
That depends somewhat on conditions. It is possible that he couldn't overhear it. And he also wasn't being completely silent. The entire time we see Al going to and from his car, he's like singing to himself. Mm-hmm. So that probably helped muzzle what could be written off as fireworks or any other number of things. I mean, remember, this is set in LA.
That's true.
And on top of that, I learned something with that sequence. Apparently, because he was buying Twinkies, and I thought they were jelly donuts, and I called them jelly donuts, and so then Snek had to tell me that apparently Twinkies originally were actually, they were portable strawberry shortcakes. So now we have the jelly Twinkies thing. That was kind of just a thing he and I were banding back at each other.
The retail guy was saying, he's like, I thought cops only ate donuts. And then I don't remember his name, but the sergeant's like, nope.
Yeah, he just kind of shrugs it off and gets him his Twinkies. And yeah, they were little portable strawberry shortcakes. And then World War II happened, and strawberries were one of the items put on ration. So they just nuts to it, we'll just sell the little snack cake as is. And then they were more popular without the strawberries, and the modern Twinkie was born.
Thank you, Professor.
Seeing Reginald VelJohnson in this as Sergeant Al Powell, he's the police buddy that is talking to McClane outside. He still is it's funny seeing him also being cast as a police officer in Die Hard, knowing that he's also the police officer and the father on Family Matters. And he's basically the channeling everybody's thoughts with the annoying police officer, where he's just calling it before everything happens. That was some of my favorite moment. He's like, they're shooting at the lights, and then boom, 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 boom. It's like, oh, they're shooting at the lights. Just the little cues with him were great.
The only thing I had that I thought was a little weird, in essence, was the kid in the limousine, or the dude in the limousine. Like he drives, like he has that kind of part where he's driving McClane, you know, to like from the airport to the party and everything, and then he kind of hangs out just in case if everything doesn't work out. And then McClane calls him and says, like, you know, hey, we're still trying to figure this out. And then he cuts the line off. That's when the terrorists are showing up to attack, which, you know, he's ended up staying there anyways because he figured he'd call back if he needs him. But he stays there for an extremely long time without hearing anything. And especially as he's listening to the news, he hears like a terrorist attack and everything's happening. And he stays there. But like literally, he's pretty much set up this entire time for that one scene where he runs into the phony ambulance, which is really weird. I know. I just felt like he was kind of like, I was like, why is he still there? I don't really get what's going on. I mean, he understands he's like a bystander listening. He's a bystander listening to everything. You're talking about
but it's the driver at the very beginning.
The driver, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was locked into the parking lot. They did close the gates. They did show a quick scene too where he was like blasting. He was like on the phone or something too, and like blasting music and whatnot. So he like because there was that scene where McClane was like, "Oh, please tell me you heard the shots and are calling the police." He's like praying that like he heard the shots and is going to call the police, but then they show him and he's just like hanging out.
I didn't think about him getting locked in. That's actually a fair point.
I don't have a lot of real criticisms of this movie. I think it still holds up. It's still like a seriously just fun, entertaining action movie.
It is. I mean, I found it a little bit difficult to keep track of who was who in terms of the thieves cum terrorists, because they're all just kind of like generic, you know, guys with guns. But they do their part, you know, reasonably well. And it is pretty cool how like Hans has pretty much thought out everything except for McClane
everything down to
there.
Like the fire alarms and everything. You notice that when he's like, okay, so the alarms went off and he immediately gives them like instructions, like say this, and then deactivate the system. Like he knows he's so like on point with everything. He's very professional. You can tell professional terrorists for the whole movie.
Yeah, terrorist in air quotes. Yeah, I can't really remember hardly any of the music, but I mean, that's because I was so invested in like, oh man, you know, I haven't seen this movie in a long time. How's he going to get out of this one with, John McClane?
Which is interesting because it was actually, I think it was Danny Elfman that scored it.
It seems like there's like three movie music guys, and like he's one of them. He's definitely
one of them.
And then there's like Johansson.
I mean, a lot of the film was actually like Christmas tunes. If you notice, like you can hear like little. That's where I would say it is probably a Christmas movie because a lot of the music you will hear is Christmas music.
Yeah, and like I said, Al was like humming different Christmas carols all throughout the film.
I'd argue it is just because the impetus for it is entirely holiday related. It's because McClane got invited by accident to a holiday party. And so, you know, the impetus for the inciting incident wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for it being in the holidays. Oh, so, and I mean, if you want to even go into like the themes of the movie, the entire themes of the movie is, you know, realizing what's important in your life. It's your family and, you know, keeping them safe. John and Holly get back together at the end because of the events of the movie. I mean, people had to die, but, you know, yeah, sometimes, you know, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
And then the sergeant protects McClane and Holly by, as he was telling the sad story about how he accidentally shot a kid. He would never pull his gun again, so he ended up becoming a desk jockey. He ends up pulling his gun out and protecting Holly and McClane when one of the bad guys who you thought was dead came back with the assault rifle and was about to shoot them down. He pulls his gun and blows them away to protect them when he said he was never going to do that again.
Yep. Now, here's food for thought. The wife is named Holly, as in Christmas Holly. Ta-da.
That's
good
true.
job.
Hollywood. Now it is in fact a holiday movie. It is a Christmas movie. Fa la 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 la.
You have gotten the final verdict from the Tomodachi Bros here. We say Die Hard is in fact a Christmas movie. It is Tomodachi Christmas approved.
So yeah, this is unanimous.
The one thing I want to put out though is the one thing that really catches me as well is the McClane's wit, how he goes through the building, goes through the duct, or like he kind of goes through the duct. A lot of his ways of getting around the terrace, a lot of the the tact that he has to try to trick them, and as he slowly takes them out one by one or two by two, depending on how many come after him. And really is really nice to see them just brain dead action. It's a lot of choreography and tact to
Absolutely.
it. At least I feel.
A lot of it, once again, it's because it's kind of what we were talking about earlier. It's a lot of practical stunts. This is back in 1988. CGI is a thing that only like big movie budgets, would have, and it's a lot of practical effects, a lot of choreography, as you were saying. So you have to be very careful as to how you frame shots and think you get creative because of that. That being said, a lot of the things that he does, like messing around with like the elevators and like the elevator doors and the things, you couldn't do anymore because a lot of that stuff is all entirely electrical and you can't really like mess with the mechanisms of the doors or like how far the elevator will go up or anything. But I mean, it's really cool. It's cool how he's able to, use his wit in order to get around and outsmart his enemies rather than, me am John McClane, me am Unga Bunga. Because ultimately, like, it seems like every single time he gets into a confrontation, I was just going to say, it's like the Europeans are stronger than John McClane is. They kick the crap out of him.
I want to also point out Gruber's kind of wit as well. He wasn't playing like just, like a generic terrorist character. He had a lot of thought about him as well. Like when it's him and the other dude in the room, he remembers that McClane doesn't have any shoes or anything, so he tells him to shoot all the glass on all the windows and everything. So it's really hard for him to move around without cutting himself, and he ends up escaping, cutting his feet on the glass, trying to get out of the room. And when he sees McClane, he catches him. He ends up putting on an accent to try to fool him, and it ends up working. And when one of the reasons because he didn't have his gun, he left his gun in the one room above the roof or whatever. In a sense, shows him that he can think on his feet a lot as well, as same as McClane.
So, is there anything else, gentlemen, that I think we all really like this film?
It's great. It's definitely if you haven't seen it, check it out. Absolutely.
It is still worth watching to this day. And it's weird how, even though some of it is like, oh yeah, this is definitely 80s vintage, at the same time, there's something undeniably timeless about the themes and the fact that the media, as are now, are the enemy of the people. Weird, right?
Oh, are you talking about the part where they actually like dox McClane and like go to his kids? And so you have a bunch of reporters talking to like little 5-year-olds being like, what do you want to tell your parents? And they're like, come home. It's like, wow, okay. You guys are total scumbags.
Also, the fact that he goes up to the housekeeper and says he'll deport her if he doesn't get the interview with the kids.
Yeah, less than subtle indication that bureaucrats are the scum of the earth.
Yeah, actually, you were mentioning that before there, Snek, how it's like this movie, despite is very weirdly anti-government. And that even though, it's the police officers fighting these terrorists / thieves, it's like all the FBI are a bunch of buffoons who are incompetent. The police chief is incompetent, and it's like it's all. And that's kind of a theme you see in a lot of action films. And this at time, it's like Ghostbusters had the same thing. That was in RoboCop to a certain extent. I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting point.
You see throughout the 80s, you see a very anti-authoritarian, the government is useless, be ready to defend yourself kind of motif. And even when they're not inept or outright the villain, they're not usually very helpful in any other respect. Like the guys who are on the ground, the cops who are already like on the beat, have a better understanding of the situation, are able to piece together the scenario faster than these stuffed shirts who come in. They're like, oh yeah, we're in charge and we're just going to run the playbook. And inside, Hans Gruber's like, yes, run the playbook. See where it gets you. I'm just like, Yeah, because he knows that you know, and he knows that you're going to do this, and then it ultimately ends up helping the villain in every step of the way. And a lot of 80 movies definitely had themes of making sure that you are the first responder and ready to deal with a situation should it go down. Now, I'm not saying that, you need a machine gun. I'm saying you should probably have several just to be safe, because that way when one runs out, you have a spare.
Oh, I thought this was going to be a wizard situation. I can't find my machine gun. I'll just leave a few around.
I'll just leave several hundred randomly lying around.
So the scene I think emphasizes the most, and I think Snek was just talking about it in a sense, but I feel like it needs to be emphasized a bit more just for more context, is that they're trying to break into a vault. They get to the last lock of the vault, which has to have the power be cut, which they cannot physically do from inside the building. But because Gruber knows exactly the playbook of the FBI, he knows that they're going to cut the power to the building, even if it's going to cut power to what it was like 20 square blocks of people inside in that area, and it's going to deactivate the lock. So they literally play into his hands because they're all just doing it, as he says, by the book, which gets them to their goal, which is close to the end of the movie where they get stopped.
Yep. I agree. All right, gents. So that's Die Hard. Thoroughly recommended, and we have all, I believe it's unanimous that it is a Christmas film. The next thing on the chopping block is pineapple on pizza good or not?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just kidding. All right, anyways, it is now Muppet Christmas Carol.
Absolutely.
This is another good one. So this was Mr. Snek's pick. So, Professor, why don't you give us the TLDW?
It's literally a Christmas Carol. But this was actually one of the versions that sticks weirdly close to the original novel. There are, of course, differences, chief among those being the whole ignorance and want thing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, read a book, because it's actually a very good book with a lot of very interesting imagery.
Did you really want to have Muppets of two starving children hanging on to Ghost of Christmas Present? I'm just saying.
Literally hanging on to the present. Literally ignorance and want personified, clinging to the present. This is about these metaphors are as subtle as Dietaku's. This is about as straightforward as it gets.
Wow, that cuts me deeper than I care to admit.
So we have Michael Caine, who plays a magnificent Ebenezer Scrooge.
Oh, he's great, yeah.
We have our leading narrator, Gonzo, the great Charles Dickens, and his assistant Rizzo, who narrate the story for us as an omniscient third-person narrator, which is weird as it's presented in second-person narration, but no one seems to see that they're actually there, so that's different. You have a Kermit the Frog as one Bob Cratchit, and accompanying family, including Robin as Tiny Tim. And not only is this a very faithful representation of the Christmas Carol story, they do some things that are just absolutely delightful. The character who in the original novel was named Fezziwig became Fozziwig. And that always puts a smile on my face. That pun is so subtle and so simple and yet so perfectly beautiful in execution.
Honestly, I love A Christmas Carol as a story, but the fact that the Muppets actually kind of steered into how much of like a horror story it is. And that's kind of something that's a shame because, for instance, in the original book, the Ghost of Christmas Past is basically this very small child, except its head is basically a wreath of flame where its face is constantly changing in the fire. And I don't know about you, but that's less like, I'm a tiny little child, and more like, get down on your knees because this is an angel of God come down to judge you type of thing. And they're ghosts. They're supposed to be spooky, and yet most adaptations are like, we're the ghosts of Christmas, and we're here to help you, Ebenezer. No, I was just going to say they're literally trying to scare him straight, and most fail in that regard. So
I think it's interesting because in this version, the Ghost of the Past is this really weird, like ethereal being who looks almost like a doll, but is very much like moving around. The effect done for it is really good too.
I would attest more of it. It's like the ghost version of like a doll / small child that I think they were trying to go for, which I believe is closer to what you were about from in the books, which was also in itself pretty creepy as well, but also in a way artsy and such. So, but yeah, I feel like it really did get kind of its point across. It did get its point across in that regard.
I actually quite like the way they presented the Ghost of Christmas Present, which is something that I didn't really feel in the other Christmas Carol adaptation we saw. I kind of raised my eyebrows at that, but I really liked how jolly and just like, know me better, man. You know?
Was he puppeted or was that a suit? I couldn't actually tell through half of the.
There is an actor in the suit. The head is remotely animatronic, the way the Ninja Turtles are, where basically there's someone off screen moving the mouth. So the mouth and the face are fully animated, but there's actually a guy inside the suit. If you actually watch the outtakes, there's one where while the puppet is dancing, he ends up bumping Michael Caine, and it's actually very cute because he's being very apologetic when it happens, and Michael Caine starts laughing.
Yeah, they have a few characters that are like that. If you're a kind of an OG Muppets fan, Sweetums is the same way, as are if you're about our age, I guess the early 90s sitcom The Dinosaurs. Pretty much all the adult characters were done the same way with the same type of technology.
Oh yeah,
actually this was what, 92, 93? That would be about the same time as The Dinosaurs. Yeah.
Yep, 1992.
Yeah, one of the first Muppet films without Jim Henson at the helm.
It was actually quite good. I don't really have a lot of negatives in my opinion for all of the whole set that we watched for these Christmas movies. Mm-hmm. This one specifically, I love the Muppet tunes that they do. I think the music in this one is great.
Oh yes,
doing, their "Hello, Mister." Oh, no, we're not paying for it, but
the song is titled "Scrooge."
Okay, all right. This is Dietaku's gun to your head moment. I haven't done this in a while, so the gun's a little bit rusty. Gun to your head. What's your favorite song from this movie? All right,
Marley. I love those. I love the way they did the Marley Brothers.
That is a good one.
Those guys, some of my favorites. It's even with the in the original Muppet Show.
Those are good.
Yes, Statler and Waldorf sketches.
Yeah.
They're always just entertaining.
Oh yes. Also, props if you caught the joke between Jacob and Robert or Bob Marley. Yeah, that joke was definitely done intentionally.
All right. What about you, Clockwork?
I can't remember the name. I think it's the one you're talking about. Scrooge is the one in the beginning when they're introducing, the character. That one stuck in my head the most. I just don't know the name of the actual song.
It's called Scrooge.
It is called Scrooge. Yes, that was the one that stuck with me the most.
All right, there, Professor. What about you?
Definitely, It Feels Like Christmas, the song that the Ghost of Christmas Present sings.
Also, I want to say is that the one that was really close to it that stuck in my head more was also the Ghost of Christmas Present, the kind of jolly and the dancing and all the everything. And that's mostly because I think it's Monster, the guy who plays the drums all the time. I'm sorry, I don't know my Muppets all that well. Animal, thank you. Animal, yes, he was in there too. I like that whole showcase and everything was also really, really good.
Oh, at Fossilwig's Christmas party, yes.
Yes, exactly.
I'd have to say also Scrooge. I know that's kind of a normie choice now, but I mean, when I think of the film, that's one of the songs I think of immediately. And I think it's a good song too because of how evocative it is of Scrooge's character. And it also really bookends the film with the song that Michael Caine sings at the very end, where instead of, everyone literally talking about how much they just hate and despise and don't like Scrooge. And then the end song,
The Love We Found.
Is all about, how he's like, I have a weight lifted off my shoulders. Everyone, I try to, help everyone and love everyone.
Yeah, he starts with a thankful heart and they transition into The Love We Found.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my obligatory movie trivia. There are two cuts to this film. There is the theatrical cut and there is the home video cut. The theatrical cut includes the song "The Love Is Gone" from the Ghost of Christmas Past segment. If you did not see the woman sing during the breakup scene, you probably just saw a very sudden breakup and Rizzo crying for no reason. In the true version of the film, she sings a full musical number, which gets its refrain repeated in "The Love We Found" at the end of the film, when Scrooge becomes better than his word, as the narrator so eloquently put it.
Mama Dietaku, this is like one of her films that she loves to play. So I grew up basically watching this every Christmas, and it still holds up. So, do you guys have any other thoughts?
It's really, really good. The thing with it, though, is I don't have a lot to say about it because it's a Christmas Carol. If you've seen one, you've seen a lot of them. This has its own take on it. It's still really, really good. I've never actually watched this, and I watched it, and I have to say, hey, this is probably going to go on the shelf for next Christmas because that's how good I felt it was. But the thing is, though, is you've seen one, you've seen a lot of them. So the story is kind of
I don't know. Like I said, my main beef with a lot of them is if you've actually read the book, a lot of them are very, very tame with how they handle the ghosts and how they handle the horror element. Because, I mean, to put it in none too subtle terms, and they kind of sort of skate around this, and Scrooge is guilty of this as well, Scrooged. The entire point with the Marley and Marley sequence is that they are literally being dragged out of hell and going, look, if you don't change, you're going to go to hell like us, and you are going to be tortured for all eternity. It is just literally them trying to scare people straight. And unfortunately, because our, culture is not really Christian anymore, it's hard to have that parable with the same weight, except that, it's a really good story, but they try to steer it away from that. But it's like, it doesn't really work if you do that.
I mean, I think this version of the Marley and Marley was, it wasn't typically scary, but it did get the point across pretty well with, as your greed grows, the chains around you start getting thicker and tighter and that kind of thing. So I think it might not show the full extent, but I feel like it got the point across a bit more.
Oh yeah, here's another fun bit of trivia for you. In the soundtrack version of Marley and Marley, there's another stanza that's not performed in the film version. And also, to begin the song, they quote the original novel verbatim. Let's see if I can do this. "It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, he is condemned to do so after death, to witness what he cannot share, but might have shared and turned to happiness."
Rousing 19th century Christian theology, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep, pretty much.
Well, it still is it's a good moral. It's a good story. I mean, the fact that we're still talking about it 200 years later, I think proves that.
200 years later, I'm a lot older than I thought I was.
Well, it's about 100. It's about 100. No, actually.
Well, hey, hang on. Let's science this. The original novel was written and published in 1843.
Okay, so about 180
Charles
years.
Dickens was a great writer, which explains why. I mean, it's a classic. It's why it has been done. Like we've talked about, there's a ton of versions of A Christmas Carol. Literally, one just came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think I know what the one you're talking about is. I never actually watched it myself, but I think I remember it was something around last Christmas.
Circus. It does definitely play more on the horror elements, but it kind of takes it a little bit to be a bit much with dead baby corpses floating around and stuff, and it's more of a weird psychological wackadoo version of it. I was not very entertained by it.
It's a very interesting thing how Andy Serkis always has weird body horror and disgusting, creepy old people in his movies that he does. I don't know. Maybe he's cursed because he was originally Gollum. That was the role that made him.
But no, I love Muppets Christmas Carol. I love the Muppets. I grew up, watching the Muppet Show. And this is just one of a lot of these movies are just movies that I just end up watching every year for Christmas. I think it's a classic and, belongs on your Christmas shelf.
I do definitely agree.
I'm actually really surprised, Professor, that you don't have this film. We actually had to look it up. I am shocked.
Yep. Actually, my parents own the copy I thought I had one. I do not. I am deeply ashamed, and I will rectify this.
How much of a Muppet's head you are, I am legitimately shocked. I'm not even like, this is not.
I actually, okay, confession time, since this is a time of forgiveness and reaching out to those who are, disabled in different ways. I actually thought Muppets from Space was okay.
You know what? Even though I really don't like 90s Muppets where they tried to make Clifford a thing and like Rizzo and Gonzo were like in everything and were central, I forgive you because your taste is awful, but it's okay. We'll make that a joke later. This is because it's going to be like 8 months into the future. Oh wait, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
Wait 4 months. It'll make sense then. Wait 4 months. It'll make sense then. Snek will go on trial for his bad taste.
The time continuum is getting all confused now.
Yeah, the time. Yeah, no, I'm going to get Doctor Who to come in and be like, stop screwing things up. But yeah, so shall we move on then? All right, so it's ironically another Christmas Carol adaptation.
Yep, it was another. I mean, there's. That's what we're going to say. Just the story of A Christmas Carol. It's a timeless classic. It's been done a bunch of times. This one was my choice. Stuck out to me. I saw it when I was a young kid and when I was just like a huge raving Bill Murray fan and like because I loved Ghostbusters. And this is a more modern take on Scrooged, obviously. Like Bill Murray, who's playing a big TV executive named Frank Cross. And it's funny going back watching this because I didn't realize how ahead of its time. Because when I watched Bill Murray in the beginning of this movie, I immediately think of like all the stuff we complain about with like modern like HBO, and like TV producers where he's like, you fools, he's like, they have to be so scared to watch it. And like he does his commercial version of like A Christmas Carol. And he's just like acid rain and murder and blood. And then, you have Bobcat Goldthwait who is showing up and he's just like, sir, don't you think it's a little bit much? And it's a different take on it. It's basically A Christmas Carol. Some of the ghosts are treated different like they are in just about every version. I will admit a lot of the jokes are a bit dated because if you're not as versed with a lot of Bill Murray's back catalog, you might miss a lot of the jokes, like with the golf balls and things like falling out of his partner's head and then the scene where he's spitting out the golf balls. And obviously it's a reference to Caddyshack, certain jokes. For example, his impression at the homeless shelter was a direct reference of Bill Murray doing an impression of Richard Burton from like 1975. I don't think a lot of kids are going to get that at all. The scene where, they're in the restaurant and the waiter like catches on fire and he chucks the bucket of ice at him. He's like, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I thought you were Richard Pryor. And, unless you know who Richard Pryor is, unless you know anything about that stand-up comedy, like it's not going to make as much sense. But it was a version that I saw when I was a kid. I loved Bobcat Goldthwait and Bill Murray, and it's like just Bill Murray this was one of the last movies I felt like he was like really like energetic in, which is a shame, but.
Oh yeah.
According to Harold Ramis, filming with Murray is incredibly difficult. And he mentioned that in the filming of Groundhog Day, they literally filmed the movie backwards so that he would be at his like most energetic and happy at the end of the movie and be like angry and miserable for real by the time they got to the earliest
And this one
parts.
was actually directed by Mr. Richard Donner, who of course we know from like the Superman films and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was surprising. Okay, all right. If this is time for confessional, Tomodachi Bros, I have sinned. I have to say when I watched this I watched this, I actually thought that Bobcat Goldthwait was actually Rick Moranis putting on an act. So please forgive me. It took me a while to realize it was somebody else.
I immediately noticed
sorry.
Bobcat. My wife's favorite, her favorite slapstick films of choice are the Police Academy films, and Bobcat's a big part of that.
I have not actually seen those, although when we were talking about other movies we should do, I did say we should watch the Naked Gun films, which I think are related to those, aren't they?
They had some crossover between them, but I don't know if it was like the same production company. I'd have to check.
I remember Police Academy being pretty funny, but it's been a while on that one.
I mean, honestly, I thought it was kind of interesting how, once again, this is very much more horror oriented. Yeah, like how his partner is literally falling apart while he's threatening him with like, I was supposed to, humanity was supposed to be my project, not the miniseries. And he, is about to throw him out of the window, except his arm falls off and you can see all his bones and everything.
Yeah, I love that. He's like shooting at him and he's like, I don't mind if you hit me, but go easy on the Bacardi.
That one got me pretty good.
It is very interesting how it is also very, puts a little toe into postmodernism, because it's very self-aware. Frank, like, almost immediately is like, oh, I'm in a Christmas Carol situation. Okay, so there's going to be the ghosts and everything. And he, like, is immediately on the watch for, like, who is going to be the ghosts, leading to some pretty good slapstick. Like, especially, like you were talking about, Cog, the situation in the restaurant where he douses the one waiter. But, I mean, I don't know. I thought it actually was a little bit rushed as time was going on. Like, I appreciate the fact that it's a slow burn and we can kind of see how Frank goes through his day and how he basically treats everyone awfully. But they shove a lot of stuff in the beginning. But that means that by the time we get to, like, the Ghost of Christmas Present, and they had this one thing where she's just, like, beating the crap out of him. And I was like, is this just, I mean, I get it, slapstick comedy, literally slapstick, but it ruins it because, like, by the time we get to, the Ghost of Christmas Future, and he's like, okay, buddy, I don't have a time. Get out there and see yourself getting burned, getting cremated. It's like, he's what, maybe 3 minutes with the Ghost of Christmas Future?
Yeah, it's not long at all.
He spends most of his time with past and present, I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas, like, to compare the two films, like in Muppet Christmas Carol, Scrooge actually, he's sent to the future. He sees, like, the hooligans who, like, stole stuff out of his house, and, cackling about what they got, and, how much they hate the tenant. And then they see people wandering around commenting on the fact that he died before he actually is like, oh my God, I died. They're talking about me. No one cares. And yet we're like barely like, oh, but it's my brother. Oh, don't burn me. And it's like, oh, that sequence is entirely over.
I have to agree is like it, in like a lot of the other Christmas Carol movies, you have this perspective of a couple of different people in general. This one particularly is just one scene of his brother, and I think his brother's wife or something like that. And he realizes he's in the casket. He's the one who's going to get burned, and it's over like that. The past and the present, they go through kind of like, he goes through his household, or in the past he goes through his household and everything. Just his parents, and, that little scene. Although, and then the present, I think the present takes the most of the time, because he goes to his secretary and her whole family. Then he goes to his brother and his family, and then I think it goes somewhere else. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but the present has the most, because I feel like they're trying to set it like, he's such a dick here and now, but in the past, I don't want to say a good kid, but he was just a kid. So there's not a lot of they could have. It seems like they wanted to go through besides mostly the present, especially because where all the slapstick happens, where I laughed more because for some reason slapstick gets me that way.
Not to say that the film's
it
bad.
has its. I always actually felt it was kind of slow in the middle when you hit the present part, but I've always found I don't know. I've always still found it quite funny. I mean, the draw for this version, because it's like, you've already seen a bunch of other Christmas Carol versions, and then, I mean, the main draw for this is if it's that classic like Bill Murray like deep cut like comedy before he ended up going into like really like weird independent films.
I agree. I think that this is honestly that really is the treat here, is that he does kind of have that very, it's the Bill Murray touch,
especially with his the final monologue of this movie where he's doing his big speech at the end before they break into the song. Was completely improvised by Murray. He did it completely off the cuff.
Now that's impressive.
I did not know that.
But yeah, I mean, is this going to be a film that I'm going to be like, oh man, I'm going to watch Scrooge again? I'm like, probably not. But it's a good film. And if you're a Bill Murray fan, I can definitely this is worth it. But
yeah, he has that 80s, the 80s SNL energy. And that was really refreshing. And it was definitely the fact that the main character of A Christmas Carol setup kind of story was aware of the Christmas Carol setup actually lent itself really well. Like there's the scene in the elevator when he's with the ghost of the future and he opens the robe and there's like these like demons inside screaming at him and he just closes the robe very calmly and just a beat and then he opens it up again and he's like, wow, that's impressive.
Speaking of which, actually, I really like the fact that they decided to have for the Ghost of Christmas Future's face, he had like a TV screen. Because like his face would actually change depending on as the scene went.
The Ghost of Christmas Future actually it was really cool, which is I think why you want to see more of him at the end. I laugh myself silly with this every time. It has its weaknesses, but it's one that I watch it every year, and I always find like the little nuances of it, and it's just it's another silly rendition of A Christmas Carol.
I might have to watch it again. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I did like my part I laughed at the most was the slapstick, just because like I said, for that got me kind of good just from how serious the movie was for. And I got the humor and I got a good amount of the humor, but I just didn't really get a chuckle or anything out of me. I was just kind of like, all right.
The wordplay jokes are really quickly exchanged, and part of it we actually had the subtitles on, which helped a little bit. I have to say that the pratfalls were really, really well done. I particularly liked his exchanges with the Ghost of the Past. Like the Ghost of the Past warps through the door. He like walks face first into it, and then he's like the head pops back to the door. Oh, yeah. It's like, haha, you thought that was gonna work, didn't you, idiot? And stuff like that worked really well.
Yeah, it works every time.
I thought it was pretty funny, and I laughed a bunch of times, but. I mean, I'm not going to send you to bad taste jail for this one, Cog. This was a very solid pick.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know. It's just maybe it's because this wasn't one of the ones that I kind of grew up with. But I mean, I understand why you really like it. So yeah, definitely good. Oh, I mean, I mean, I'm in the bad taste jail too. I think we all are at some point or another.
We all are at one point or another.
There's a lot of prisons and jails in the Tomodachi Bros, apparently.
Someone has condemned one of the other bros on many different occasions. I think we're all in there by now.
All right. So anything else we can say about Scrooged?
No, it was fun to bite into a new one because I had never seen this before, and I enjoyed it.
This is my first time too.
Like I said, I've grew up with this one, and it's one I go to. It was just one I go to every year. I quite enjoy it.
I might watch it again, but this one for me didn't click as well as the other ones did personally.
We're gonna move on. This is my pick, and also like one I like to watch every year because I will admit this plot is a little bit weak, but I'm gonna be entirely perfectly honest. Part of the reason why I like this film is because it is literally basically me and my family. And I think it's like, all these Christmas films are always like, oh gosh, golly gee whiz, Mom, I'm here and you're here and Dad's here and we're all perfect together. And it's like, that is not the way my family ever was. I don't think anyone's family is like that. And if they are, you're kidding yourself. That's absolute bupkis. It's like family is a bunch of weirdos who, fate and genetics decided you're all related and you have to live with each other. And, you all love each other but you all drive each other nuts, but you try to do the best you can. And, I think that this film, more than any other Christmas film, kind of proves that because it's just a bunch of really weird people but they love each other. They clearly care for each other, but it's just them going through Christmas while they're being really, really weird. And this plot, as it is basically this 9-year-old boy, Ralph, who is trying to convince his parents in 1950s Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to buy him a Red Ryder BB gun. But I mean, as it is, that's kind of ancillary to just a series of vignettes of him and his family and his friends just as they're going through the Christmas season.
So this movie for me is like straight up just nostalgia Christmas. Number one, like every Christmas that we have, at least in my house, this movie is always playing in the background, even if no one's really watching or not, because we have it on the channel that we'll usually have it on, and it's always running. And number two is like there's a lot of stuff with Ralph that you can relate. There's a lot of relatability in the movie. Like he really wants that Red Ryder BB gun. When I was really little, I really wanted that Nintendo 64 or that GameCube or something like that. So you would do little things like, hey, this is what you want, or hey, oh my gosh, Mom, did you hear that they came out with a new console or something? Like, it's super cool. Like, and then you're trying to hype it up. Like, if I get this, I don't want to ask for anything else for Christmas, or, it's like the one thing you want. And, I mean, unfortunately, where I grew up, there wasn't a lot of snow. There was no snow or anything like that. So unfortunately, I don't really know about the snow part, but I mean, just the relatability of the movie, I think draws it in a lot. And personally for me, it makes it a really nice movie to watch, because you get a lot of nostalgia. Like, even if it's not directly relatable, it's a lot of nostalgia bombing in my opinion, in the feels.
All right, Professor Cog, what about you? You guys are being awful quiet.
This is the flip side for me. I didn't really... Christmas Story was always that weird movie that was on TV that I always just caught bits and pieces of, that I never really bothered to watch all the way through. I know that's, I guess, a Christmas film sin, because it's like one of the movies that everyone watches every year. So I don't get the feelings of nostalgia from it that a lot of other people do. This was actually one of the first times I watched it all the way through in decades, and it's an all right movie. It definitely has some weird plot elements. I think the funniest part for me is at the end of the film. A lot of the stuff at the beginning, like I get why people, obviously identify with it. It was always just that weird movie with the leg lamp, and I'd never quite connected with any of that. But Ralphie is, he's super easy for a lot of young boys to relate, when you have that one thing that you want and you're trying to like manipulate your parents or, at a young age, which is, super easily relatable. I get thrown off because, man, there's a lot of screaming and crying in the beginning of this movie. And then I feel like I enjoy the second half of the movie better. I mean, despite the flaws, it's an enjoyable movie. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I enjoyed it. My favorite scenes of the movie are the final mall scenes, when he goes into the mall and is like waiting to see Santa, and everybody's like losing their mind over Santa. And there's the kid with the goggles just actually like hit me. I literally laughed at that one where he's like standing in line and he's got the kid like, I like Santa with like the goggles on him, and Ralphie's just like, okay, and he's just keeps talking to him, and then the scene where he finally gets like kicked down the slide. But yeah, I mean, it's another Christmas classic. It wasn't one that I grew up with, but I mean, it's still it's entertaining.
I'm in a similar camp to Mr. Cog. It reminded me a bit of a holiday version of My Neighbors the Yamadas. And if you haven't seen it, it's not really one continuous storyline. It's a series of vignettes that happen to star the same family. And while it is largely laced around the holiday season, it's not really one continuous story, as said. There's the BB gun plot line that comes up from time to time. But then it's interrupted with, the father, is a curseaholic par excellence. And then it's the trouble the boys have with the bullies. And I had seen very, very short clips from this film. the tongue stuck on the post, the kid being kicked down the slide, the oh fudge moment, and all that. I had seen those out of context. And honestly, I'm just going to say for anyone who's in my position who still hasn't seen this movie, despite it being all this time up until now, context doesn't really change much of that. But at the same time, you get this interesting story from this young boy's perspective, where the story really is about the young boy's perspective. He is really into guns. He thinks the gun is cool. And, you know, he has to deal with very mundane issues, but in his head, he's like imagines them as being so much more. Like one of the first fantasies he has is this little house on the prairie kind of moment where the family is dressed up like frontiersmen, and he's like this weird rhinestone cowboy shooting the bad guys with his BB gun. Mm-hmm. It's just immensely entertaining. And because it's done from the kid's perspective, you get a very, even though the family is deeply flawed, you get a very wholesome look at them. Mm-hmm. And because there comes a time when he is bullied so much, he finally snaps. And he just tears into the bully, just goes completely ape on him. And when his mother catches him, he is just like, I'm dead. This is the end of the line. I'm just going to be killed, and that will be the end of my life. And they just kind of like, oh, well, I mean, there was a fight, but
that threw me for a loop. Yeah, because the kid's like bleeding on the ground, and she just kind of shows up and is like, let's go. And he's just, laying there. But just before she like loses her mind, and they do the soap scene where it's like, do you know what your son just said? And then I don't know. It was just kind of a weird flip of like he says a curse word once earlier on, and then in that scene where he's supposed to be, he's like, he literally says, I was saying all the bad things were coming out of my mouth or whatever, and suddenly she's like, super compassionate. I mean,
there's a bit of context, I think, between those two scenes. I think they make a really interesting juxtaposition. In the initial case, it was a very mild incident, dropping the nuts on the snow, and his reaction was very out of character, or so it seemed, despite the fact that he very obviously heard his father say that word many, many, many times.
Yeah, that is a thing.
But then when it finally gets down to the bullying, there's no way they didn't know. So eventually, a young man has to put his foot down and stand up for himself. And well, if the adrenaline pushes you into monkey mode,
yeah, I get
it.
that. I get that.
And seeing that severe emotional reaction probably helped remind the mom that he's a human too. It's a really interesting scene, and actually, Dietaku commented on this as we were watching. After she washes his mouth out with soap, and he has a very amusing aside about that as well. She actually puts the soap in her own mouth just to see what it's like, to see what she's doing to him. And I'm like, this shows a lot of human depth and warmth. And like I said, it is a little disjointed in some ways because there is no real plot per se. But at the same time, it's just this kind of wholesome family film.
I think the plot movement is the stories in themselves. It's the stories of the kids' memories going from like scene to scene kind of thing. I think that's what they're trying to go for more, which is why it's more like little skits here and there than more of, a good giant, like a big coherent plot line. Which I mean, I didn't bother me as much because I kind of understand what they were going for, or because the whole thing is done with the narrator of the kid as an older adult, remembering everything. So it's not like he's not going to remember every single piece of thing that kind of went around.
No,
yeah, and I actually think that's really brilliant, actually, because you get the young kid's perspective, and then you have the adult version where he's like, well, I knew good and well, but because I was a kid, this is how I reacted. And, he literally almost indeed shoots his eye out in the, I guess what could be construed the climax of the film. And his mom's just like, yeah, that's That's fine. You're okay. And what matters is that
Because he
you're
lies
okay.
to her and is like, I know I'll lie and say it was like an icicle fell on me or something.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm on the opposite end of the coin from our last film then, because, I mean, talking about relatability, gentle listeners, if you want to know what a Dietaku looked like when he was 9 years old, basically, I was literally Ralphie. I was a short, little, gangly, weird-looking, little, pale, blonde kid with huge Coke bottle glasses, and basically I looked like that up until about 12 years old, at which point I became a really tall, gangly, pale, blonde, weird kid with glasses. And I met two other weird kids. And well, I'm now in a podcast with them. So I guess I can't escape these weirdos.
He went from Ralphie to Krusty.
Basically. I'm not as swole as Krusty yet though, but I think partially my problem was I had really weird glasses designs when I was a little kid. I can literally like the entire sequence with with the cursing and with the bully. I mean, I never got bullied because I was always just kind of, no one really cared to bully me, but people bullied my little brothers. And my father was always the case. It was like, if someone's messing with your brothers, you have to, join in. And my mother absolutely hated violence to the point that she never gave me a toy gun. And so it's a case of, it's like, it's a little kid. He wants to get a gun. His mother doesn't want him to have a gun. He's got this weird little brother, and he has to stand up for his weird little brother. And, he has to take on a bully. And there's this entire thing where his father's constantly cursing and he gets in trouble for it. I mean, that same thing with me. And yet, once again, like when I actually fought off the bully that was messing with my little brothers, I mean, it was the same thing. It's like this woman who absolutely hated violence, even to the point that I never got like a Nerf gun or anything. She's like, no, you did the right thing. You protected your little brothers, even though you were mouthing off the entire time to this guy. You did the right thing. And so, yeah, there is kind of a judgment gap in their cog, and I completely agree with you. But I mean, the fact that the mom kind of stands up for Ralphie, and I think just kind of shows that, yes, even though it's kind of against a lapse in her like morals or whatever, I think it shows, her judgment, or the fact that she does deep down, or I mean, not even deep down, she generally does care for her sons. So, I mean, I will freely admit I am incredibly biased towards this film because of those reasons. Like a lot of the things that Ralphie has to deal with, that was the way my family was. It still is. I mean, it's not like any of them are sauntered off the mortal coil yet. No, God willing. But, it's so I will freely admit that part of that is why I like it. And I've watched this film pretty much every year since I can remember. I mean, I know that that's part of it is that nostalgia. And I mean, also to a certain extent, it's the timeless quality of it. Even though it's supposed to be a period piece in the 1950s, I don't think they really bring like a lot of attention to it, which I thought was really cool. And probably is why people are still watching it, even though it's almost 40 years old now. So yeah, go ahead. You can put me in bad taste jail. I will accept this, but I really enjoy this film. And I'm glad that, at least Mr. Snek at least appreciates it, in spite of the fact that he didn't really grow up with it like I did.
I mean, I'll be right next to you in that bad taste jail as well.
I appreciated it. It's definitely an entertaining, movie. It's just, like I said, I didn't have the same connection to it, I think.
No, I get you.
I mean, you also got to appreciate, as you're talking about his little imagination scenes, how over the top and crazy
those scenes
they are.
Great too. Yeah, I forgot about those.
Like the one that wasn't mentioned already was the one where after he eats the soap, he was wondering
that
if
scene is great. Yeah.
the soap was going to make him blind or something. So he comes in walking with the coat and a cane and everything. And it's like, oh my gosh, what happened to him? He has a cane. Oh my, like everyone was just like over the top crazy. And he's just kind of
that scene is great too. I think those are easily two of my favorite scenes in the movie. That other, I had almost forgotten about that. In his dream sequences are pretty entertaining.
Also, the one where he has the Red Ryder BB gun, he's always spitting, like in all of the Western movies. Was a kind of a nice touch too. Like every scene he spits. It's because they show it, and then every time he hits one of the little robbers who are dressed in striped black and white t-shirts and black pants, like they're just generic like robbers you'd see like a really old movie, and like the beanie and everything and the mask, he shoots them all in the butt. And when he piles them up, they all have red X's drawn on their eyes like they're dead. As well, it's like all these little touches is just it's hilarious. It's amazing and hilarious at the same time.
Alrighty, gents. I mean, there's not really any music to speak of in this film.
Mood pieces mostly, but there's no no real music or anything.
Anything else?
So much for tuning in to our very Tomodachi Christmas special. We hope you enjoyed.
And if you'd like to hear more of me, Clockwork Fiction, you can tune into twitch.tv/clockworkfiction, where I play a lot of video games. Hopefully by the time this come up, I will have started streaming again. I was getting off a couple of internet issues and stuff like that. I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy since the new patch came out. I'll probably play a lot of other games like I've been getting more into the fighting game now since a lot of those went on sale, especially for the Christmas sale coming up and everything. So tune in for that as well.
Oh, we're gonna try and do a collab. Maybe get Mr. Cog in on your stream as well, because we've been playing 14 with him as well.
And so, I believe Mr. Snek is streaming now too.
I am. It's not regularly scheduled just yet. We're working on the details. Look forward to that. And there is now an open Ask Me Anything thread on my YouTube page and my Twitter feed at Hipster Snek, where you guys can ask me anything as much as you'd like.
Age, sex, location.
Old enough to know better, young enough not to act on it. Sex, yes, please. And location, a faraway world in a land where monsters rule.
Nice. Thank you. That was very prompt. All right,
Merry
ladies and
Christmas.
gentlemen.
Happy New Year.
We will see you guys next time.
See you in 2021.
Oh, God, 2021.
The dragons are coming.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you for listening to the Tomodachi Brothers Review Podcast, produced and recorded by the Hipster Snek, Dietaku, and Cog. Sound design and editing by executive producer Sean Taylor Brown with Cog Sound Engineering. Music written and performed by Sean Taylor Brown with Costas Vaz of Core Insight Studio on the drums. We hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next time.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Tomodachi Bros Anime Podcast. I'm one of the co-founders and co-hosts of the podcast, The Hipster Snek. If you want more content from me, I have my own YouTube channel, The Hipster Snek. Links will be available everywhere I can spam it up until I get a custom one, but all in due time. I do weekly game reviews, and in the future, probably more than that. Look forward to it, and I'll see you there and on Twitter at Hipster Snek. See ya!